Your president is watching. America is watching. But more important, Godfather is watching. Make no mistake, there will be no fuck-ups. Marines around this world would give they left nuts to be where you are. Anybody not want to go? Marines, kill on 3. 1, 2, 3. Kill!
Born to those who pledged their lives in sacred honor, was smiled upon by God and freed from chains and iron collar. He is held aloft on unity and by history revered. For preserving peace through strength, his wings now reach across 200 years. But for each of those in 1 year more, God has smiled upon the core. From the Barbary coast to the eastern sand, by sword, by gun, or by bare hand. So it's been and shall be weighed. Though many are born, few are made. Faithful always they shall remain. Dogs to loose when war is waged.
devil me, and the wall with the jaws and the razor teeth, when the brimstone burns and the angel wings. night, Chesney, wherever you are.
All right, welcome to Cold War Radio, ladies and gentlemen, live from studio number 1 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I am your host, Hutch Bailey Jr., deep down in my broadcast bunker, the former Smith & Wesson studio, sometimes the Sig Sauer studio. Could be the Remington studio, all kinds of different studios. Please follow me on Spreaker, ladies and gentlemen, like the Facebook page, facebook.com/Cold War Radio 22. The email at the show is scrtv@live.com. The Cold War Radio patron hotline, 412-206-6208 if you'd like to call the show. If you're listening via podcast, the voicemail number is 412-567-1460. You can catch the podcast anywhere there are podcasts. You can hear it streaming in the morning at 8 p.m. on the 405media.com, on demand at iHeartRadio or a slew of other places. The Cold War Radio app, free in your app store or YouTube, iTunes, wherever YouTube has captions. Ladies and gentlemen, please go to SteelCityResistance.com, become a Cold War Radio patron. Check out the research room, the video page. And if you'd like to write to the program, you can do that as well. Write to Cold War Radio, P.O. Box 10433, 370 Castle Shannon Boulevard, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 15234. Man, that still gets me fired up all these decades later. My goodness, Earth, Wind, and Fire, ladies and gentlemen. Let's turn the turret to the south, go to the Empire City of the South, and welcome Miss Stacy Rush to the program from Atlanta. Hello, Stacy.
Hello, Hutch Bailey Jr. and Sal. It is good to be with you tonight. Looking forward to a good show. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, and let's go right to my west and welcome Sal to the program. Hello, Sal.
Stacy, Hutch, how's everyone tonight? I'm doing pretty well. I told you what I was up to before the show, being the aristocrat that I am, and taking the easy way out, according to Hutch. But hey, everyone has their ways, don't they?
Absolutely, absolutely. I used to work in that business. I know that when I worked at a fleet leasing company, all the people that leased cars for tax write-offs and things, they all had 8 wheels. They had 4 wheels in the garage that I had to switch over every time the season changed. But Sal was putting some snow tires on or some. I didn't even know they still made them.
Heck yeah, performance snow tires. So I'm not, you got to be able to drive at high speeds the right way.
That's right. Just watch your brake. Watch your braking. That's all.
Yes, sir.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, first let me kick off the show and say thank you. I overlooked some donations. I think I overlooked them. But thank you to Valerie Z, Rocky, Stacy B for donating last month. I can't remember if I called you out before, so I figured I better do it now. So thank you very much. We appreciate that. I passed that down a little bit. But I guess we have to start this evening's conversation, guys, with the elections. I think that's probably the first analysis that we need to make, because the initial cuts weren't really truthful, so to speak, and it was a lot to take in one night. But let's start in Kentucky. Stacy, I believe you've interviewed the governor of Kentucky. I have a couple times. Always thought that he was a good guy, straight up guy. Got 9 kids, and he was defeated. And I thought, oh my goodness, what happened here? And then I didn't really know anything about Kentucky's state of affairs when it comes to state politics. But apparently Matt Bevin is the least favorable governor in the country, Stacy. I didn't know that. Did you know that?
Yeah, no, I didn't know that either, and I didn't realize that he was so far behind in the polls before Trump even came. It's Kentucky, and I just assumed that he would win no problem there. But after the election, I saw a couple of articles saying that, this really wasn't a Trump issue. This is a Matt Bevin issue, that he apparently messed with some pensions in Kentucky, which really got him kind of, hated by all sides, and apparently just doesn't have that likability factor that, whether we like it or not, some people need it in politics to be elected. And so I don't think it was a huge surprise that he lost, although, the mainstream media, oh Lord, and Democrats, they're holding on to every little piece of good news that they can in the hopes that Trump won't win 4 more years.
Absolutely. And he also passed a sales tax. He did a bunch of things that I didn't even know he did. And I read an article, Sal, from a group, a guy representing a group of libertarians in Kentucky. In this article, they listed all the transgressions. Now, I don't agree with the premise that, a guy doesn't do everything that you want him to do on the libertarian side, so you elect a socialist. I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me at all, but that's what happened apparently down there. It was a close race, but like Stacy said, the guy was underwater before Trump came down there. Trump raised him up a little bit, and everybody else on the Republican ticket won bigly.
Yeah, especially, guess what? Us Republicans, or the Republicans down there, they elected a black AG. Can you believe that?
First time in Kentucky history.
Yeah, us racist Republicans. Us horrible people. Whatever label you want to put onto us. And I'm really glad that he won. It's fantastic. It's not only fantastic for himself, but the people of Kentucky as well. And it looks like that he may be a rising star. Have to keep our eyes on him.
Well, like I said, did you ever interview him, Stacy?
I did not interview him, no. I knew of him, but no, I never interviewed him.
I knew I was with you when we interviewed him anyway, but it was at CPAC a couple times, and I thought he was really genuine. I really did. It's a shame. I don't know if he's going to recover or not. When you get that many Republicans against you in your own state, that gets a little tough to overcome. I mean, nothing's impossible. I'm trying to find a tweet of mine that I tweeted, but I can't seem to.
Yeah, I was about to ask you, did he concede yet? I knew he wasn't yesterday.
No, he did not concede. And as a matter of fact, they are going to have, and I forget the word, a recanvassing. Recanvassing. Yeah. Thank you, Hutch. And that has to happen in very quick manner. And both sides can be present. I think I believe there's about a 30-day time period before the new governor gets into place or any legal action can take place. So it's going to be a fairly quick process.
There were some abnormalities or irregularities, as they say.
And that's what they're talking about. I haven't read any reports or have seen anything that's credible right now to that, other than those words have been used as far as I've heard, Hutch and Stacy, irregular.
Irregular.
Yes, irregular.
Well, and I will, just so no one gets their hopes up. I mean, when have we ever had an election where there's been any kind of anything, whether it's a recount or recanvassing that a Republican has ever won. So don't be holding out any hope that they're going to turn that back to red, because it's not going to happen.
And especially with a guy that's not popular. I mean, he's not going to get a whole lot of support. But I was getting a little ticked off earlier, and I sent a tweet out. I did a very quick job of instant research. And I tweeted this today. I got tired of being called hearing Republicans being called racist. Had some young brain dead people saying it. And so I just had to throw out there, according to the archives at the Tuskegee Institute, 4,743 people were lynched in the United States from 1882 to 1968. 3,446 were black. Not to bust your bubble, public school or university graduates, but the other 1,297 hanged by Democrats were white Republicans fighting for civil rights for blacks. I mean, if we don't teach our kids something, this is our fault for allowing this to happen, for allowing this narrative to be put out there and just continually repeated and repeated ad nauseum until this new generation believes it. It's very damaging, and it pisses me off. But what are you going to do? Let's move on. I don't know if this is going to be a random act of journalism, as Rush Limbaugh would say, or if it's a business maneuver by CBS against a weakened opponent in ABC. But 60 Minutes is going to do a story. Let's listen.
Next week, an extraordinary edition of 60 Minutes. Inside the international sex trafficking ring, masterminded by billionaire businessman Jeffrey Epstein.
Being a kid, I didn't realize what world I was being brought into.
To the outside world, he was rich and respectable.
This mansion represents jail to me.
In secret, Jeffrey Epstein was a monster.
There wasn't a part of my body that they did not use.
People need to be held accountable. It's not okay to sexually abuse anybody.
A 60 Minutes special investigation.
I was trafficked to other billionaires. I was trafficked to politicians. It was the elite of the world.
This was an international sex trafficking operation. It was a well-oiled machine.
The New York billionaire.
Jeffrey didn't do this all by himself.
The British prince.
This is a real photo. That is Andrew.
He says that this photo is a fake, that he was never there, and that he's not his arm, and they're not his fingers.
Oh, the chubby fingers. I know.
And the brave women.
There's people that are alive that need to be held accountable.
They should be named, and they should be shamed. What they've done is horrific.
Fighting for justice.
There are many, many people that have serious culpability, and I expect a number of them will be prosecuted.
Prince Andrew should go to jail. I mean, is he ever going to? Probably not.
How the wicked world of Jeffrey Epstein disintegrated, and why his coterie of equally immoral friends should still be worried.
Little Harry, Stacy, I don't know. I don't know what to expect here. I'm a little surprised. This could be, if they do it right, it could be big.
Yeah, I mean, and it should be big. It should absolutely be big. And I think it's, like you said, it's interesting coming on the heels of Project Veritas, you know, their insider video of Amy Rohrbach discussing her frustration, although she seemed to be a little bit more frustrated that she didn't get the scoop than she was about what actually occurred. So I look forward to the interview. You know, I think that the American people as a whole probably need to see some sort of visual, whether it's pictures, whether it's the logs, you know, that have the initials of the people who were on the plane. They need to see this en masse before this really starts taking, you know, a whole nother degree of momentum to continue the story out there. So I look forward to it, and I hope that they do a good job with it. It looks like so far, I mean, from the way that they're teasing, it looks like a compelling interview. So it'll be interesting.
It will. Sal, now help me screw my head back on right, because is it just me, or does it seem, as it does to me sometimes, that you see all these things that are going on. Look how long this Epstein thing's been going on. You know, and I understand the part with the FBI and the Durham investigation, but doesn't it seem like we don't have a Justice Department sometimes? I mean, is it me, or does it seem like that to you as being in the same type of work?
Well, sometimes the wheels of justice move slowly, and I am sort of myself, questioning the timing of this. Why didn't it immediately come out? Maybe there's a lot of stuff being withheld. I was listening to something else today and heard that someone has a potential source where there is video out there, and that it may be video that is an independent party that is out there of a lot of things that have gone on. And I'm interested to see what becomes of that. I know that this particular person was very guarded with their source. They said their source was impeccable. And again, I'm hearing this third hand.
So you're like a whistleblower.
No, absolutely not. But yeah, I could be in terms of, whatever's going on in Congress with those numbskulls. But anyhow, There appears to be other things that are going to slowly trickle out. So we need to keep our eye on the story and see what else happens. But I hear that there is a lot of stuff still out there. And yes, I'm very curious to why maybe we haven't seen some of the more available stuff. Perhaps it's being analyzed. Perhaps there's some things in the background that are going on that we're very unaware that the government's doing. They may be building cases. I don't know.
Which would be a miracle, wouldn't it? But I mean, can you guys get over the fact that ABC had this story during the 2016 election, and Amy stating on that tape saying that first I was told, who's Jeffrey Epstein? No one knows who Jeffrey Epstein is. Well, you know what? Two of the biggest talents at ABC certainly knew who Epstein was because they had dinner with him after
envelopes.
Epstein was released from prison. George Stephanopoulos and Katie Couric, who blocked me on Twitter today for bringing that out into her attention.
Nice. I'll have to do that tomorrow.
Well. It's funny how the facts start to line up, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And especially when it gets close to home.
I'll tell you the most scary thing about the whole thing. Who owns ABC?
Disney.
Yeah.
Pedophile Central.
The wonderful world of Disney that we all grew up with. That's turning our boys to girls now.
It's not the Disney we used to know.
No. That's hideous. So I would, anybody who's going to chime in on this, and I know there's a lot of people in the audience that have, I've seen them, make sure you attach something identifying Disney. Because, I mean, that they're taking care of our children, right? I mean, they're entertaining our kids. And Stacy, I remember you coming on the show one time somewhere where you had watched something that your children were watching.
Oh, yeah. This is when I first noticed it. And my daughter was probably, she was probably like 8 years old. And we were watching a show that was appropriate for, 8 to maybe 12-year-old kids on Disney. And I was just taken aback by the fact that one of the characters on the show was talking about how good looking this kid was in their class. And the other character said, oh, everyone's got a crush on Bobby, even the boys. So starting to put that out there for, little children between the 8 and 12 years old. And this was years ago because my daughter is 12. So it was 4 years ago. That, they're starting to throw out being gay is just totally normal right there on Disney, here. And having to, feel like you have to explain that to your daughter, like, as if she's ready to know that boys sometimes like boys and girls sometimes, you know what I mean? It was it was such a disgusting time for me.
I mean, it's something, they're trying to really, in all honesty, if you look at some of the travails of the homosexual mafia, and that's not to say that everybody that's gay is in this. This is a group of, some of them aren't even homosexuals, that are trying to destroy Christianity, among other things, because they can't coexist. At least they don't think they can coexist. This reminds me of a popular bumper sticker that's ridiculous. It's something that starts out very subtly, and it's just about a done deal anymore. I mean, but we still have to fight for morality. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and make this an anti-gay show because it's not. But the ideology of everything we want, nothing you want, just can't stand. I mean, and that's what their ideology is. It's we're going to force this down your throat, whether you like it or not. And no, you're not. Not
right.
To me,
and
you're not.
And that's the problem with it, is that I'm kind of in the camp of live and let live.
Me too.
I don't want government telling me anything that I need to do with my life, and that goes for homosexuals as well. But I don't want to be forced to do something that I disagree with. And for me, it doesn't bother me. I grew up, my grandmother rest her soul, owned a hair salon when I was a child growing up in the 70s.
I'll bet there's some stories.
Oh, you have no idea. I mean, looking back at those pictures at her in all these hair shows and fashion shows and all the cool dresses and cool hair. I mean, she was just the most amazing woman. She was
awesome.
Her husband died after serving in Vietnam, and she was a single mom of 3 girls, a business owner. And she taught me to be a very open-minded person. She had black women working for her at her salon. She had gay men working for her at her salon. And these were people that I grew up only to know to just respect them for being people, you know? Right. And they, too, were very respectful and deserving of respect. These men and women were at my Nana's salon. So I am not in the camp of having a problem with people being gay. I do have a problem with the militant left saying that everybody on this planet better accept it or be damned. Yeah. I have a problem with it.
Absolutely. I agree. And, you know, I have like a couple rules. Live and let live, but you don't get more shit for being gay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm going to make fun of your ass. I just am. You know, when I see Pete Buttigieg up there, all I can think of is Andrew Dice Clay. I can't take the guy serious, man, especially if he's with his husband or whatever it is, however that arrangement goes. I think he identifies as female from what I understand, but I don't know.
Well, aside from their using identity politics, things in South Bend aren't going so well. So gay or not, things aren't looking too great there. So whatever he's got going on, it isn't translating to anything great in South Bend.
Well, I'll tell you, there's something to think about here, though. And we got a minute or two before our guest, but there's something to be said that if you look at the campaigns of Biden, Elizabeth Warren, and Bernie Sanders, they all have built-in doomsday time bombs, man. Not one of those 3 is going to get the nomination, in my opinion. Somebody will come out of the woodwork before they let Elizabeth Warren do it. And the same, I think, with Bernie Sanders. And Joe Biden's just going to kill himself politically.
Yeah.
You know, so
I don't know. Sometimes I wonder
who's that leave standing?
Well, it's going to leave Hillary Clinton to join back in there at
some
point.
Possibly.
I mean, that's Hopefully. The only thing. That's the only person I can think of. You know, I truly believe Michelle Obama when she says she doesn't want to do it. I do not believe she will enter the race.
She's too lazy. Why would you want to do that with all the money they have now? They ought to just fade away.
Exactly, and I would want to do just that. You know, the reason I keep thinking that Hillary Clinton is going to jump back into the race, and that's because, you know, then she can use the whole, Trump's just going after me because I'm his opponent in the race, not because I did anything wrong, you know, kind of getting into the Joe Biden camp.
I think they're just going to make and are making so much money through public speaking and books. Why do they even want to be bothered with that?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, he could go and live the life right now. They don't have near the integrity of Donald Trump, who's doing it out of his heart. You know, so anyway, we'll figure that out. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Omar Qudrat, the former political advisor to the NATO ambassador, former Department of Defense counterterrorism prosecutor involved with the USS Cole attack, the 9/11 attacks, and Gitmo. His parents immigrated from Afghanistan to the United States in the 1970s. Again, let's welcome Omar Qudrat to the show. Good evening, sir. I'm Hutch Bailey Jr. This is Cold War Radio.
Great to be on with you. It's great to be on with you and discuss this really important foreign policy issue right now.
Absolutely. And you've been on the show before. I have 2 co-hosts, Stacy Rush in Atlanta.
Good evening. It is so nice to have you. Thank you for joining us.
And
Hi
Sal.
there. Thank you.
Sal in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, it's really good. I got a chance to listen to you a little bit before the show and did a little bit of homework. So I think we're ready for you.
All right. So I think you want to talk about the coming Middle East conflagration, and with your vast experience, there's a lot of things playing out. And unfortunately, Omar, in today's news cycle, there's only about 7.3 minutes of time that's out there that's not about the impeachment.
Right.
You know, we're really not getting a whole lot of news. I do too. What's going on?
Well, we have a vital national security interest in the Middle East, in spite of what the focus of the media is right now. But what I think we got to keep our eye on is what is playing out between Israel and Iran, the escalation of tensions there. And then ultimately, the big question is, what is the United States going to do, and how far would we be willing to go in the event of a conflict between Israel and Iran? And then, of course, what is Russia going to do? And so, some people are concerned that Russia would back Iran up were there to be a confrontation with Iran and Israel. My perspective is that Russia at the moment has a global policy that it's trying to pursue, expanding its power, and Iran is just another tool in that. Even though they call Iran an ally, they seem to back up Iran diplomatically. Iran has boots on the ground where Russia wants them. In Syria, they have Hezbollah, they have Iran conventional forces in Syria. The issue that creates is now Iran conventional troops, Hezbollah, are pretty close to Israel and close to the Golan Heights. And so that's going to escalate tensions. And then Iran wants to have capabilities placed for munitions on Syrian territory, which would be lasting. And of course, Iran has one of the most aggressive ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile programs in the world, and reportedly China is helping them with it. And so this poses some danger to global stability. I do not think that Russia is going to get stumbled and sucked into a confrontation because Iran got itself into some sort of a military debacle with Israel. Frankly, I don't think Iran wants that either. Iran has been very adept at being able to use terrorism, extortion, and expand instability throughout regions while remaining outside the jaws of the U.S., while remaining outside the jaws of any real multilateral power to stop them from doing it. They're kind of staying in the gray war space, not the black and white conventional war space. But this is something that could be escalating. There's been some words that between some of the powers that have created a little bit more concern. And for the time being, Russia is talking about they want to generate dialogue. They'd like to help with de-escalation, that Iran is committed to regional stability. And all that really means is the translation of that is Russia just wants time. And Russia does not want the U.S. in the Middle East. Russia's trying to expand its power in the Middle East. And so I don't think Russia wants a situation where the U.S. would be drawn in to the region because it has to back up Israel. Russia wants America to be fighting where Russia wants us to fight and where Russia wants us to be bogged down, and not on our terms.
Let me get you to clarify something, Omar. You said, and we realize that Hezbollah is pretty much financed and backed by Iran. But did I hear you say that Iranian regular troops are embedded with Hezbollah and very close
Iranian
to
regular troops, they go wherever the Iranian forces tend to be, whether they be covert forces or not. And so whether you have plainclothes military operators, covert forces, Iran is engaged in Syria. And so that's one thing that Israel is quite alarmed about. Let's also not forget that Iran can turn Hamas on and off like a light switch in terms of attacks against Israel. And so, from the perspective of Israel, we got to put ourselves in their shoes. And if you look at a map and you look at the places we're talking about, it is very close. And Hamas in Gaza, you have Hezbollah now near the Golan Heights. I mean, we're talking about really, really close proximities. And Iran wants to have munitions capability on Syrian terrain, aside from the ICBM program that obviously can transcend continents. So these are kind of serious concerns and should not be dismissed.
Hey, Omar, this is Sal, and I'd like to shift gears a little bit, maybe a little bit closer to home to us. Can you explain to our listeners the relationship between Venezuela and Iran?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll place that in context. Russia and Iran want satellite states, and they want to spread their power around the world. And the way they're going to do that is the Iranian head of state and the Venezuelan head of state some years ago characterize their relationship as the axis of unity, Iran has been backing Maduro. Iran is seeking to send new generation warships into the Venezuelan waters. Iran has Hezbollah in Venezuela. And so what's the upshot of that for Americans? Venezuela is in our hemisphere, the Western hemisphere. It's pretty close. And they want to expand their power, Iran and Russia, deeper and deeper into our hemisphere. What's the so what about that? In the future, if there's a military conflict and Venezuela serves as a satellite state where Russia has sent nuclear-capable bombers to Venezuela, Iran is sending conventional war power to Venezuela. This is a concern, and so this is not about neocon versus globalist versus nationalist. We have interests in ensuring that we remain the preeminent power in the Western Hemisphere.
So I wanted to ask you a question on your opinion about Trump pulling out of the Iranian deal. Do you think that was a good idea? Do you think it increased the potential for conflict in the region? I just wanted your opinion on that.
It's so hard to tell. Iran was already cheating on that deal. The deal was very flawed. It's really hard to do a sort of, in the future, to do a counterfactual, backward-looking hypothetical. But what we do know is Israel, who would probably feel the most threatened out of any country in the world with regard to Iran's nuclear program and capabilities, they saw the JCPOA as a certain path for Iran to get that nuclear capability. What Iran's doing now is, and they're, Israel and Russia are on opposite sides of this. So Russia has been backing this JCPOA deal. Obviously, Israel's against the nuclear deal. Israel's trying to build a global coalition against Iran. Russia's trying to back up Iran and get Europe to play nice. But Iran's just going to continue with what they do. They will use this withdrawal from the JCPOA to extort nations, and so they'll threaten to escalate tensions and escalate instability and ask France for a $15 billion credit before they're willing to even speak to this matter regarding their nuclear commitments and what they're going to do. Ultimately, the broadest question is, how can we prevent a nuclear-capable Iran that is in the world's interests? And I think that the United States is pretty clear that we will never allow a nuclear Iran, and I think all Americans need to support that policy.
Mr. Qudrat, if you could, and this isn't a trick question, if you don't know the answer, that's fine, but can you, one of the things that always makes me nervous talking about Iran is the mullahs and the way their government is kind of held hostage. Do you know about the 12th Imam theory and why that makes Iran so dangerous to this world?
Sure. I mean, I'm not an expert on Shia Islam, so I just want to be clear that I'm unqualified to speak about religious matters and specifically the Shia perspective and specifically the Iranian Shia perspective. But from my understanding, there's a vision that some of the world conditions would bring about the return of the 12th Imam, which happens to be the Imam that the Iranian Shia leadership recognize. So the danger, I think, that you're trying to put your finger on is that there's sort of an apocalyptic perspective that Iranians might have in a manner that would escalate or kind of motivate them to accelerate certain types of unstable conditions to bring about the second coming of the Imam, their religious leader. I find Iranian leaders to be incredibly shrewd, incredibly clever. I think it would be a mistake for us to view them as just crazy fanatics. I think that they certainly
I think they believe it. I think they believe it.
I think they do too. But I think Iran knows how to create and wreak havoc around the world and somehow stay out of the jaws of world powers.
Good point.
But a nuclear-capable Iran is something that the world needs to ensure we prevent.
Sure, but Omar, are sanctions going to be enough? Is that going to, break their back or have them say, "Hey, mercy"? I don't know if they'll use mercy, but is that going to be enough? It seems like you really can't fight a bully like that with just simply sanctions. Isn't enough.
It's a great point. We see that Iran is being recalcitrant, and they really need to show that they're not cracking under this kind of pressure under the sanctions. I'll go back to what the former chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Congressman Ed Royce, said. And what he said was we had Iran down for the count with the sanctions, and then President Obama initiated the JCPOA talks and lifted a great number of important sanctions. It was the perspective of the author, Congressman Ed Royce, and others who were most intricately knowledgeable about the effects of our sanctions that they were, in fact, working. Obviously, JCPOA took us off that course. But I want to say that everything Iran is doing globally, the war in Yemen, backing the Houthis, stoking instability in Bahrain, backing Hezbollah in Lebanon, dealing with their forces in Syria, being engaged in Iraq. They killed countless Americans during our war in Iraq, and they're still involved there. They're involved with Venezuela. This is all really expensive, and so we got to force them into a resource constraint and decision so that these foreign policy adventures just create an inability and a choice set that constrains them. You're raising a great point. I hope they work. I share your sentiment that this is a terrorist state. It's the most effective state sponsor of terrorism. We're all tempted to want to just, go forward with the force. And I think we got to make sure that whatever we do, we got to have our long-term plan if we're going to engage militarily.
Yeah, I do too. That would not be as clean, I don't think, as some. Well, not that any of them are clean. I mean, I was in Iraq during the surge and saw personally physical evidence of Iran's explosively formed penetrators and other munitions with lot numbers on them that showed that no, they were not from the Iran-Iraq Civil War. They were from last week. But anyway, that's something. It is. And the only reason I asked you about the 12th Imam was because of the nuclear threat, and because that if they get it, they're going to launch it, in my opinion. And maybe that's not true, and I hope it's not. But I still think that we need to ensure that they don't get it. I don't know how close they are now. It makes you wonder. But let's go back to Venezuela for a second. Sal, that was a good subject area to bring up. I interviewed Ambassador Bolton before he was a part of the administration, and he told me that not only Iran, but also that Cuba had huge influence in Venezuela and it was damn near running Maduro. Is that on your radar at all when you think about Venezuela?
Yes, and down to Maduro's personal security. And what does that tell you about Maduro, who claims that he has support of the Venezuelan people, when you have Cuban operatives and Russian operatives, intelligence operatives on the ground, an uptick by hundreds of Russian covert operators on the ground responsible for his personal security? Venezuela is a nation that is anti-America. They're influenced by Cuba, Russia, Iran. I would be taking very seriously the possibility in the future that if we end up in a conventional confrontation with global powers or multiple, that Venezuela would be used and influenced by countries like Cuba, Russia, and Iran, and even China. As you know, China has been very engaged with Venezuela as well, to be used as a satellite state against our country in the Western Hemisphere. So, yeah, I mean, when you look at the list of the influencers of Maduro, you see exactly where that country stands. There's a real reason why we've been so interested and preoccupied with Venezuela. You know, a lot of people, it's just, a little country down there in Latin America. Why do we care about it? And, what I want to get across to your listeners is we have vital national security interests to remain a preeminent power in our hemisphere. and arming and getting conventional machinery of warfare placed in and around Venezuela by some of what could be our greatest adversaries in the future is something that all Americans should be concerned with, and we should support a policy that prevents that.
I'll tell you, and it's a shame because I have firsthand experiences with Venezuelans in the upper echelons of the military. This is going to be a surprise to you probably, but I went to Valley Forge Military Academy with H.R. McMaster, so he knows this too.
Kidding.
He knows this too. Those are some good soldiers. Venezuelans are some of the best soldiers I ever served around. So it's a crying shame if we let them go completely to the hammer and sickle or whatever, the Cuba or Hezbollah or whatever. I remember doing a story probably 7 or 8 years ago where people were uncovering or at least reporting the presence of some rudimentary missile sites that Iran was setting up in Venezuela. This was years ago that I heard that. So I don't know how long this has been going on. You heard the stories of things that were found on the border. But let me shift gears one more time, and then we're almost out of time here. But I'd like to get your outlook possibly on where are we in Afghanistan. It seems like that's a never-ending situation. I had a family member that was security for the security contractor for the State Department and said that the construction over there that the State Department is overseeing is permanent.
I was in Afghanistan for 18 months during the surge as a Department of Defense official, and I have some observations about it. To answer your question directly, where are we on this 18-year war? We're trying to do peace talks, right? And so I think the core question is, who are the parties to what would be a peace agreement? And if it's the Afghan Taliban and the United States, what I would want people to think about is the Afghan Taliban, I do not believe, can deliver peace, even if they're sincere about it. There are foreign powers that have veto power over the destiny of Afghanistan, unfortunately. Pakistan has been backing the Taliban for many years, and they can set the agenda of the pace. They've managed the insurgency against the United States. And so when President Trump was the first president who said, no more, we're not going to be giving hundreds of millions of dollars to a country that is opposing us and essentially giving money to Pakistan to kill us. And that was very refreshing.
Let me ask you something else. I just want to see if what I was taught is true or what you know about it. I was in the Army Warrant Officer Staff course at Fort Rucker, and we were covering a bunch of things about Afghanistan. And one of the things that we covered was the fact that there are several different quote unquote Talibans that are operating in Afghanistan, and the cultural situation between warring factions, if they're Afghani Taliban, and at that time it was the Northern Alliance, defeats them, then they can join the Northern Alliance and everything's all good. But if it is, say, the Taliban or Al-Qaeda from Uzbekistan or Azerbaijan or something like that, those people are so hardcore that you have to kill them all. So there's more than one force that's arrayed out there in this group of tribal enclaves that we call one unified country that's probably not as unified as we think it is. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely, Hutch. And I've been to our detention facilities where we detain captured enemy off the field, and foreign fighters is always an issue. Where the United States gets involved somewhere, there are so many people around the world who are motivated to engage in their perspective of jihad and get over there and swear allegiance to either Al-Qaeda or the Taliban. We had people from all over. There's Russians who are part of the Taliban. There are people from all over the place. The core question is, who are the Taliban? What are they capable of delivering in terms of an agreement? If you look at the Shura Council, the Leadership Council of Taliban, which is based in Pakistan, right? So if we're concerned about safe havens for terrorism and we're in Afghanistan doing all this for all these years to deny a safe haven for terrorism, well, Pakistan is a safe haven for terrorists. The Taliban's leadership is there. The number 2 of the Taliban's council is Siraj Haqqani of the Haqqani Network, and that may ring a bell. Haqqani Network is a designated, by the U.S., designated terrorist organization. Hey, Hutch, you're a soldier, right? So you had a ton of equipment.
Retired.
That's pretty expensive stuff, right?
It is, yeah, sure. I was in a G4.
Right, so where's all this coming from? They got endless resources, endless personnel. They have a will to fight that's persistent, and no doubt drugs and the poppy cultivation plays a role in their financing. But we got to get foreign nations on board. They have to fundamentally change their policy. We've been getting lip service from a lot of nations. We've been finding Russian weapons on Taliban that we've been killing. There's evidence that other nations are trying to accelerate, obviously keep America bogged down. The fact that our envoy for peace talks started out by flying God knows how many countries, I think exhibits where we are. I mean, we've gotten to a point where we got to get so many foreign countries on board with what happens in Afghanistan for us to end our conflict there. So we need to really be firm and not let countries just play us and take money from us and say nice things in our face. If they're not fundamentally changing their policy, we've already done this for 18 years. They've been lying to our face, and they've been killing U.S. service members.
And Omar, with that said, and everything that you've spoken about tonight, how important do you think it is for Donald Trump to win the 2020 election?
I will tell you, having been in Afghanistan, also on multiple TDYs, not just for the 18 months that I was there during the surge, if we don't have a president that is decisive like this and is willing to give the accurate assessment at the outset, saying no more, we're not going to give hundreds of millions of dollars to a country that's going to use it to kill us. We're not going to get anywhere if we don't have a president who's not willing to call things out and fight for the American people. And when we say ending this conflict, doing so responsibly. He walked away from the peace talks. Let's not forget that. He's not so desperate to try to fulfill that campaign promise that he's going to jeopardize the national security of the American people. We want an irreversible, lasting resolution to this conflict, and we don't want to have to go back there in a manner that we're there right now. So I'm not seeing anyone on the field of the Democrats who I think is up to it. I mean, these are people who I just giving you my personal, they are just out of touch with reality. Oh, yeah. They're going to get played by the world, ending wars either irresponsibly or getting played into conflicts all over the place. I'm not even hearing a global vision coming from any of these candidates on the left that appears coherent to me and makes me understand what direction America would go in as a foreign policy matter.
All right, Omar, I don't want to get in trouble with your publicist, so we're a little bit over. I want to ask you one more question. You managed...
I'm happy to talk to you for as long as you'd like.
Outstanding. You managed to garner 36% of the vote in California District 52 in 2018. The Democrat defeated you, but any plans for the future, sir?
I'm really, freedom is a beautiful thing. I love life right now. No political campaign. I actually get to see family and people who I actually want to hang out with. So I have no plans for that right now. But it was an amazing experience. I'm a Republican in coastal Southern California, so I didn't really need a poll to know what was going to happen, right? And
you got over 100,000 votes. You got over 100,000 votes. You just got to find the right district.
I'm so proud of it. I'm so proud of it. And the anti-Trump sentiment in California is so deep that every single one of those votes means a lot to me. And let me just add something else that was, I thought, incredibly special. I'm the son of immigrants from Afghanistan. I'm an American Muslim. I was a former counterterrorism prosecutor. I'm an officer in the U.S. Army Reserve. And I won a 6-way Republican primary. in the middle of this context where our party is getting accused of being bigots and racists, I beat, the evil people, the rich old white guys. That's what the left characterizes as the bosses and the bad guys. I won a 6-way Republican primary. You had an American Muslim in 2018 carrying the flag of the party of Abraham Lincoln. I couldn't be prouder. That was just something that was so special to me. So when people ask me on the trail, I remember a lot of journalists who were on the left say, how could you be a Republican Muslim right now? I'll tell you, well, let me tell you my experience. And I would tell them that and say, that was pretty darn welcoming to me. I won by a commanding margin. I was a GOP nominee, and I was judged on merit by my fellow Republicans. I was not reduced to just being my skin color and my ethnicity and my religion. That was not the end of my qualifications when it came to how I was being evaluated by the Republican Party. They were looking at who I am, what I bring to the table, what I've done, and that's something that I think speaks volumes. And we're not focused on identity politics, but that seems to be the name of the game and really all I'm reading whenever I'm trying to find news online. And I think that was a very powerful experience, and I just want to highlight that about
absolutely
the Republican Party.
This show is very focused on jihad and their war against the West, and you were cited by the Clarion Project as somebody who gets it. It's all right. You're a Muslim, great, but you're anti-Sharia.
Hey, Hutch, this isn't hard, is it? I mean, how hard is it?
Not at all.
Why? We got to get to a point where simply stating radical Islam is a threat to the United States and our national security. Why is that controversial? We got to get to a point where something that simple, a proposition that simple, is no longer controversial in America. Shutting down people who raise legitimate national security concerns by calling them bigoted and Islamophobic and just trying to shut down the conversation, I think it just creates more tension, it creates more resentment, and ultimately we don't get anywhere. So I've called on my friends from on the left. I see people who want to shut down people and call them Islamophobic all day. And look, there's bigotry that exists. There's anti-Muslim bigotry that exists, but I told you my experience. I won a Republican primary, 6-way primary by a commanding margin. But I ask my colleagues on the left, just say something about radical Islam, or what is your policy with it? What are you doing? I think we should be able to do two things at once. If we want to go after hate crimes and so forth, and the FBI statistics show that there's an uptick in hate crimes against American Muslims, okay, we should do that, and we should try to create domestic harmony. At the same time, I need to see all Americans who are raising their right hand, taking an oath to the Constitution, as representatives of the American people, spending a lot of their time on national security. And radical Islam is a threat. I hope we get to a place in America where saying something that simple is no longer controversial.
We do it every week. 35,894 deadly terror attacks since 9/11. Omar Qudrat, thank you very much. You're a very interesting guest. I'd like to have you back. You're very on point, and you know what's going on. I'd love to have you back again when these issues come up, sir.
Thank you, sir. I'd love to. Great to be on with you all. Thank you.
Well, any final comments? Anything you'd like the audience to know? Any points of contact or anything like that?
Follow me on Twitter. I try to bring a little bit of sense when it comes to radical Islam, when it comes to some of the issues that shut down our debate on national security. I'm at Omar Qudrat 1, OmarQudrat 1. And if, I've heard this a lot, where are the Muslims? How come I don't hear them speak out? I'm speaking out as loudly as I can. Follow me on Twitter. And, if you push my message out, you'd be doing a big help to get American Muslims inspired, or at least have a place where they have some support and they have a voice in addressing radical Islam. And then the last data point is I saw a Gallup poll from some years back, not too long ago, that that held that 88% of American Muslims said that care does not represent their values. I looked at a lot of data recently because I was really curious about this, and I was concerned with what I was going to find. But there's diversity of thought in the American Muslims, and that I guess it's not a big surprise. But these extreme figures that the media gives the microphone, I say they don't represent us. I don't know who told them that they can say they speak for all American Muslims, like we're a monolith. You have thousands of American Muslim service members and people in the intelligence community who are willing to fight and die for this country. And so to the extent that your listeners can listen to, in addition to the people who irritate us, to people like me, I'd appreciate it. Omar Qudrat 1 on Twitter.
All right, sir. Thank you very much for coming on, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Looking for an alternative place to find news and opinion? How about conversing with fellow patriots? Join us Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific for Cold War Radio. You will find it at www.Spreaker.com or in the Spreaker app. Search for Cold War Radio and you will find it. Since I've been listening, I have met some terrific patriots and learned quite a lot about current events that the mainstream media will never tell you. Please come and join us. Be inspired. You will feel right at home in our Spreaker chat room.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Cold War Radio. That was an excellent interview with Omar Qudrat, an Army lawyer, Army Reserve attorney. I'll just leave that one alone, but that's what he is. But very, very knowledgeable, Stacy and Sal. And I guess, the first time I interviewed him, I was a little nervous because I did the interview with Norway. And I'm thinking, uh-oh, man, this Norway's going to tear this guy up. And then I looked at his background. I vetted him, obviously. And I was like, no, wait a minute, man. Let's give this guy a shot. By the time it was over, Norway was eating out of his hand, man. I mean, maybe not that, but you can tell the guy's on the money.
Yeah, he is. He is. I mean, that was unbelievable. And, I first found out about the threat of Russia and China and Iran at our southern border when we went to CPAC a couple of years ago. And I remember how frightening that was to hear. And so it was good to hear his understanding of it and bringing it to your listeners, Hutch, so that people do understand that this is a real problem and it is right at our back door. And we, the people, need to make sure that we, are holding our representatives accountable so that they are looking at this as well. We cannot ignore it. And he was just fantastic.
I just wish some of our people in the intelligence and defense community weren't such neocons, man. It's like they don't have enough depth. We can't fight everybody all the time.
Well, and we're not, and that was one thing I was going to ask him about is and I've been saying this for years, with technology, it's leveling the playing field a lot. Nuclear weapons or not.
Right.
Look
at us. We have a radio show. I don't have a tower.
Exactly. How about a drone dropping some sort of chemical over the Super Bowl stadium?
Right.
I mean, these are things that we really have to understand. Not just that. How about a hack attack into a power grid at a main, hub of commerce in the U.S.
or in Minnesota during the winter.
Absolutely. It's like we are on so much more of a level playing field, and this is so much more complicated now. And I think it is important that you do have decisive leadership, like what we've seen with Donald Trump and the fact that he's not messing around with Pakistan. He pulled out of the Iran deal. We really have to think about different ways in which we can influence these countries, whether it is through crushing them economically.
That's the future, I think. I think that's definitely there's a couple things. There's economics and there's also food. and there's going to be oil pretty soon. But those are economics as well. Go ahead, Sal.
Yeah, but I'm looking at a big globe right now, and we're talking about all this impeachment crap and all this other nonsense
childish.
and whistleblower. Yeah, but when you look in the map and you see Venezuela and you see the United States, it's not too far away, is it?
No,
it's not too far away at all.
I mean, it's so close. It's a couple hours on the C-130. I mean, it's not that far.
It's not that far, and think about. I'm just looking at the map and saying, wow. And I bet you there's a lot of people who don't know about that relationship between Iran and Venezuela.
Right.
And
no, I'm glad you brought that up. Let me do this just because she's got to go, I think. Stacy, thanks for coming on. How can people get in touch with you? And we'll be looking forward to you next Wednesday.
Of course, it is always a pleasure being with you and Sal. And before I go and give my contact information, I just have to say I just saw a tweet come across my feed. President Trump is now reading the whistleblower lawyer's tweets on stage. So if your audience hasn't heard yet, the lawyer for the whistleblower tweeted out in January 2017 on top of a Jake Tapper tweet about Sally Yates being fired. The whistleblower's lawyer quoted that tweet and said, "The coup has begun." January 2017. Thank you very much. That is the attorney for the whistleblower on the Ukraine call. I mean, it can't become more of a clown show than it already is. And this is just going to continue to backfire. So keep your heads up. And keep out there and make sure that you're talking to your neighbors, friends, get them out to vote. We just lost a city race here in my city. A mayor now of this town is a liberal, which I'm completely shocked that occurred. The council members are not. So that's a nice help with balance. And this person happens to be somewhat of a moderate Democrat. But, these things happen, and they happen right in front of you, and you can hardly believe it because you think, oh, it's your city. Of course, you're in the South. In Georgia, this is never going to happen, and it happens. So just keep your head high. Everybody get out there, get your friends out there, make sure everybody votes in 2020. And I look forward to seeing you guys and talking to you next week.
Stacy Rush, ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, so there we go. And I guess let's talk about the Pittsburgh elections for about 45 seconds. Sal, I swear this city would vote to send themselves to the electric chair. They passed the parks, whatever you call it, proposition for a new tax on everybody to fund parks on the East End mostly. The rest of the city,
anybody.
The rest of the city's screwed. I live in the second largest neighborhood in the city, and nothing's coming here, But everything's going over to Bill Peduto's area, buddy.
Yeah, isn't that fantastic?
It's lovely.
And it's a tax that's never ever going to go away. So
none of them ever do.
It's going to be here till you decide to vote with your feet. I hope people realize that option does exist.
It does.
If it fails at the ballot box, you can pick up and get the heck out of there.
That's right, man. We got some other things. Well, let's go first to the phones. Let's go to Ken and King George. What did you think about the interview, sir? What's on your mind?
Oh, the interview was awesome. To get a now when I was in Sea Cadet or doing Sea Cadet stuff, we had a cadet that his parents, when they dropped him off, he was like, well, he can't eat pork. Okay, well, is it because he might go into anaphylactic shock? Why can't he do it? We thought it was because of medical reasons,
Silly you.
Had nothing to do with yeah. Well, it turns out, okay, regardless, I don't want to talk about him right now. I want to talk about the election in Virginia.
Okay, that's fair.
So, as everybody in the audience knows, I'm an election official in the state of Virginia, right? Security guy. So, we had a sheriff's race in King George. Our previous sheriff retired after being elected I don't know how many millions of times. Dempsey did a good job. But anyways, the incumbent, he appointed a guy that's, he's lived in the county his entire life, started at the bottom of the ranks, worked his way up, and he was running as, he was appointed to take Dempsey's spot when he retired. So he wasn't essentially the incumbent, but he's doing the job. Now, the guy that was running against him is a retired state police officer, also lives in the county. And the amount of shenanigans that went on throughout the day was just insane. Now, I don't know if everybody that's voted in their life, right, usually have some sort of local police there, making sure that everything's on the up and up, right? Nobody's doing anything crazy.
Not in Pennsylvania. But anyway, go ahead.
Okay, well, in King George, they send out the deputies just to, interface with the security officer, make sure everything's cool, nobody's
right
violating any of the election rules, we're electioneering within the 40-foot line, and, this guy was utilized, or was basically came in, was yelling at me because the deputy that I was interfacing with was, opening doors. I mean, he's a preacher's son, for crying out loud. It's a backwoods country town. Everybody
so you're
knows
saying,
everybody here.
So basically, to get to the point, you're saying that there's a lot of tension at the polls.
Yes. For this sheriff's race. And eventually, it got to the point where, this guy was calling the registrar, and now he got spanked soundly, 66 point something to 33%. But I mean, I don't know where this guy got his money from, but he had signs all over the county, and at the polling place.
I heard that Soros dumped a hell of a lot of money in Virginia, Ken. I mean, this wasn't something that happened randomly.
But it was just nuts. I mean, all
I can
day,
imagine.
And in fact, the lieutenant. So to make the pastor's son, who is the one of the deputies down here, I was talking to him. I know him. I live next door to his brother. Right. Like I said, it's a small town. Everybody knows everybody. So finally, this candidate, not the sheriff, the candidate came in and was complaining that this gentleman was interfacing with voters. Now, half the people know this guy, either they've been pulled over by him or whatever.
Barney Fife. Yeah.
I mean, we live in Barney Fife town.
Right, I got it. I lived there before too.
So I was like, look, if you have an issue with this, I said, you take it up with the chief.
Right.
And she went and essentially, he filed his complaint with her, and she came out, talked to the deputy. Deputy went out into the parking lot, waited for his wife to show up because he's allowed in the poll.
Can't bring a squad car. Right.
Right. So he waited for his wife to show up. Him and his wife voted together. He left. All right. Well, then there was a younger gentleman that showed up, still in uniform, to kind of, interface with me, the security guy, to make sure everything's going well, all right, no problems, no nothing. Nope, everything's cool down here. He ends up leaving. Well, finally, the lieutenant who's in charge of all these guys showed up doing his job. Well, this candidate just happened to be at our poll. He comes rolling in there, you can't be here in uniform, you're intimidating voters. And I'm not going to mention names, but this gentleman looked at him and he says, I'm doing my job.
All right. There you go. So who won the which one won?
Not the guy that was complaining. Well,
he got beat by the preacher's son, or what?
Oh no! The preacher's son.
It's been a long story, Ken. Wrap it up, man. Wrap it up. What's the bottom line? What was the bottom line? What happened?
So the guy that basically has been doing the job didn't get beat out by the, what everybody considered the outsider.
The guy complaining.
So,
all right, good.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing. So there was at least a couple good things that happened in Virginia. But, man, I don't know if you watched me on Twitter. I started calling Virginia the Commonwealth of D.C., man, because that's what's happening.
Oh, and it is. Now, one of the other good things that happened here in King George is our at-large supervisor, she got soundly spanked, too, by an incumbent, or the incumbent got spanked pretty soundly by a newcomer. So
Republican,
we're
Democrat, what?
Well, it's all they got to run as independents, but
okay.
but the
you better not use that word. You better not use that word spank for female candidates. All right.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, they were both females running, but the incumbent has been there for about 8 years, and there's been some expansion down here, and we're only maybe an hour and a half. I can leave my driveway and be on Independence Boulevard in an hour and a half on a good day with no traffic. So that's how close we are to D.C. So you get a lot of these, and they're trying to kind of turn us into like Waldorf light down here. If anybody's familiar with Maryland. And we just don't have the infrastructure to support it. And, everybody's willing to, support these developers and stuff, big money developers in Fredericksburg that have money to come down here and, we'll clear trees out, we'll build houses. Well, what about the school system?
Right. All right. Ken, I got a whole lot of stuff to get through. I appreciate your report from King George, and thank you for your service at the polls. I got to go.
All right, brother.
Yep. Thank you for calling, man. Ken from King George, ladies and gentlemen, from the Camelot Farms in King George, Virginia. Now, what the heck did I want to say? I wanted to say something. Anyway, let's get back to the program. We've got some things happening. NBC News. Well, no. First, while we're on election, Sal. Something that, and I don't know how to affect this. I was thinking about who to contact, but the Republican Party in Allegheny County is so weak that I don't know if they're going to be able to help. But I don't know if you had a problem with this. I certainly did. One of the things that Allegheny County does to kind of give an edge to the Democrats, at least in the judicial branch of our local government, is every couple years, the judges come up and there's a question, terminate them or let them continue in their position as a judge.
Retain them.
Retained. But they fail to list the party affiliation. So unless you know the party affiliation of 2 pages of judges in the county, you don't know whether to vote up or down.
Right. And, some of them actually, as you know, some of them cross-register. So, and that's, I think, what you're perhaps getting to.
No, my point was normally I would just hit the R button.
Right. And
but this year, I wanted to vote for an independent for district attorney. So I was afraid that if I voted straight Republican, it would ace that one out.
It would have. You're correct. It would have aced that one out. You would have lost your choice to do that.
Right. So I didn't do that. And then I went and I didn't know what to do. I mean, I don't want to, tell a
well,
it needs to change. The party affiliation needs to be the hell on there.
Well, supposedly I think the party affiliation is going to be on there, but it should be more distinct.
It's not now. It wasn't.
Yeah, it just
yesterday. It wasn't on there.
Yeah, I saw it on there, but I don't know if it actually told what they actually were versus them.
I spent 15 minutes. I spent 15 minutes voting, which is 12 minutes too long because of that.
I know that they're going to take away the straight party ticket. I believe that is changing in our election. I know,
and I don't think it should. I don't think that should change. But I think they ought to damn sure tell you what party those judges are. I mean,
I think there should be an R or a D by their name in bold as to
damn
what
sure,
they
or independent, whatever they are.
Right, yeah. Or
are you voting?
Or libertarian, whatever the heck they are.
Are you voting to murder babies or aren't you? That's what I want to know. Yeah. You know, I don't care about the rest. The rest is immaterial to me. I just heard somebody chime in, and they're not there.
Yeah, I heard a chime too, but I agree. It can be a little bit. Not a little bit. It is tricky. It's tricky when you go in there, and that's why that's why you have to do your homework and know the names.
That's true, but that's a lot of homework, man. And most people aren't going to do that. I didn't do it.
Well,
I had forgot about it.
Well, some of your fellow neighbors voted for a tax that you have to live with for the rest of your life. So
right.
I don't think they knew anything about that thing. I don't think that they knew one thing other than the parks are going to be great, and they spent a boatload of money on that.
Did you see the map? Did you see the map of where the money's going? It's blatant. It's blatant. It is blatant. It's going to the millionaires. Anyway, all right, I'm going to leave that one alone. We've got Marlene from Eugene, Oregon on the line. First, we're going to go to an NBC interview, and this is interesting. This is really interesting. The NBC went down to Florida thinking that they were going to turn some Trump supporters. They were stunned.
Here in the battleground state of Florida, it's these voters the president will need to keep him in the White House.
Show of hands, how many of you voted for the president back in 2016? And how many of you plan to vote for him again in 2020? All of you.
Yes.
You're raising both hands.
These are members of Club 45, the largest grassroots club of Trump supporters in the country.
Would you say your support for the president now is more or less than it was when you first voted for him?
It's more.
A
lot more.
Yeah. More. Yeah. And has the impeachment inquiry changed anything?
One inquiry. It's galvanized our support.
So you're supporting more now.
We're stronger than ever.
Gallup polls show an average of 86% of Republicans have supported the president throughout his time in office, a number that never dropped below 79%. And even since House Democrats launched an impeachment investigation, the president's favorability has barely wavered.
Have you all ever felt this level of passion for another president?
Oh, no.
No. What is it that you liked about the president?
As a Jewish woman in America who previously voted liberal, he has just astounded me in every way. I mean, we've been waiting 50 years for the embassy to be changed to Jerusalem. And I think that shows that he's not afraid to make the right choice.
President Trump was the first time you voted for Republican.
Yes.
And Raymond, what about you?
He made a statement at a conference one time to Black America.
What the hell do you have to lose?
And that stood out to me. I have nothing to lose like the game. The unemployment for Black America is way down. And insurance cost is reasonable. And he's done all his promises to me.
So you feel like your life has gotten better since the election?
Definitely.
When it comes to the impeachment inquiry, does that affect your perception of the president?
No, it doesn't. And I think that the Democrats were going to find anything possible to impeach the president.
Here in the president's backyard of Palm Beach, where he just declared his Florida residency, some voters say an attack on the president is an attack on them.
He believes in the family unit, which I think the Democrat Party wants to destroy. They always accuse us of racism, being homophobic, and it's the furthest thing from the truth.
Do you think the president has done anything that would warrant that label?
I don't see it.
Support the president hopes to ride to victory one more time.
He's been fighting for us this whole time. We're going to fight for him.
So they're sticking with the president.
Stunned
What are the
back in the
issues that they're
studio.
concerned about?
Several of the people we spoke to said they feel like President Trump has made the court system friendlier to evangelical Christians. Others, as you saw, cited support for Israel. But every single person we spoke to said they liked the man. They appreciated that he was not a traditional politician and that he spoke to them directly.
Okay. Thank you, Morgan.
Thanks, Morgan.
Go to steelcityresistance.com to the video page and watch the video in that last 20 seconds and look at the long faces in the stunned studio. CNN came to Pennsylvania and tried the same thing. Now, this is a little bit more convoluted, but you got to wait to the end for the bomb on this one.
Do you think that President Trump plays any role in that divisiveness?
No.
Yes. Do you think he's being helpful?
I think he's being helpful, yes.
How? How is he bringing the country together?
This is Camerata on CNN.
I'm not sure how he's bringing the Democrats and Republicans together. However, I do think he's trying to get stuff done.
Let's go around, and one word for these past 3 years, how you would describe the Trump presidency. Go ahead, Allison.
Divisive.
Entertaining. And you never know what you're going to get every day.
One long one, one of a kind. One of a kind, definitely. I believe he's for the people.
So you believe the Trump presidency for the people means selfless?
No.
Just for the people.
He's making a change.
Embarrassing.
Oh, that's a good one.
That is a good one.
Okay, wait for this.
Fantabulous.
And so
High five.
Crystal, is there anything that he could do or anything that could happen that would make you not vote for him?
No.
If he shot someone on Fifth Avenue, would you vote for him?
You'd have to know why he shot. Yeah, why did he shoot him?
Stunned. Look at silence.
Okay. And tomorrow,
Okay.
we will hear from that same group of swing voters which candidates they're paying closest attention to, who they may be leaning towards, and which issues are really going to help them decide on Election Day.
Look. Bell ripped a double to the notch. And this one soars out of here. Wow! It leaves the ballpark on the fly. Hello, Allegheny. Josh Bell with the homer. One of the loudest home runs you'll ever see.
That's what you call getting out.
Well, why did he shoot him, Marlene?
Oh, he probably did. Maybe he didn't want to that day. I don't know. I hope not.
Hey.
Oh, goodness. I was just thinking, you were talking about, we don't have any real elections out here in Lane County. It's pretty dull and boring. But for what you were talking about in Pittsburgh, my God, that sounds so much like out here. I swear, your county and ours are. There must be some connection in there some weird way, but it's just I see so many similarities. It's just crazy.
Yeah, it's a shame. It really is.
I know.
I'm not going to live here much longer, but I don't know.
I'm figuring that out. I know you're not, but you've got to figure out the right time to move to wherever it is you're going to move to.
I hate to capitulate. I mean, I'm from here. You know what I mean? It's
I know you are.
It's unbelievable. There was a time when Sal and I could understand, the affiliation with the Democrats because of the unions, but those days are dead. Those days are gone. I mean, most of the people, well, not most of the people, but so many people in this city are either millionaires or on the dole. I mean, they're voting for stuff for themselves. It's sickening. You ought to listen to these people.
Oh, I know.
You ought to listen to these people. It's something else.
You got to see Biden? Yes, I did.
You can look at me.
Obama, 2012, he's going to win, baby. He's the man. Biden was down here, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
Go, Obama!
What do you like most about the Obama administration?
That, let's see.
I can't take her anymore. Sean, what's going on in California, man?
Hey, what's up, Hutch?
Hey,
what's going on in my area? Hey, Marlene. I was just like you, caught off guard by this whole judge voting thing. I never saw that on the ballot the last time I voted in 2016, but when it was 2018, wow, they hit me with a fastball, and I'm like, what is all this? I couldn't tell which judge was for which affiliation. I'm like,
oh, it's not just here. It's in California too.
yeah, I saw that, and I'm like,
This is bullshit, man.
What do I do?
This is bullshit.
Total bullshit.
We need to start
know what to vote for.
We need to start demanding justice on this, man. This is voter fraud. That's what it is. You know, I went into my polling place, and there was 4 Soros machines set up, and we have the most dial-up internet machines you ever saw. I mean, this old stuff that we have in Allegheny County is embarrassing. You know, and one of them wasn't working, and I asked the guy that I see here, this guy, I see him and I seethe because I know he's a Democrat operative. And I asked him, I said, well, did anybody vote on that machine? Oh, yeah, they did. I was like, well, are those votes going to count? Yeah, they're going to count. And I will say that as I was voting, a technician came in and, quote, unquote, repaired the machine. Now, I don't know what that means. Because there's no way of knowing. I get a ticket that says I voted, and that's it. It doesn't say who I voted for or anything. Allegheny County's corrupt as hell. And that's the only reason that there's a blue mark in the middle of Pennsylvania's southwestern corridor that voted for Hillary Clinton. I guarantee it's because of fraud in this county. I guarantee it. I mean, I couldn't get anybody to pick that mantle up. I tried. But it's bad, man. And I'll tell you, the guy that won the head seat in Allegheny County, Fitzpatrick, 4 or 5 years ago, he went to the same high school warden I went to, a Catholic high school, and was full on for Planned Parenthood and abortion. And I said something on Twitter about that, to that effect, that the brothers at Central Catholic High School wouldn't be too happy with that, Rich. And the next thing I know, I got a guy following me that I never heard of before, and I checked him out, and he was the solicitor, the head attorney for Allegheny County. Followed me because I made that tweet. So I blocked him and everything. But I mean, that's the way these people are. You know, you're putting yourself at risk when you talk against them.
Oh, they're anti-2A too, Hutch. You know,
damn right they are.
Both of them.
Absolutely.
Good grief, that sounds like Oregon.
No,
we don't have polling
so
places.
desperate.
We got Tammany Hall here in Allegheny County. This guy shouldn't even be on the job. But anyway. All right, so final comments, Marlene, and then final comments over to Sean, and we're going to move on with what we have left of the show.
I hear you. Well, I guess toward the end of this, I was going to bring up a story, but I'll wait on it.
No, go ahead.
But no, okay, I'll try to make it quick. It was looking at the American Thinker, and it was talking about Chile and how they are joining the other nations that are getting all pissed off about the climate change mantra and all that baloney. And basically, long story short, the Chilean government climate changes are causing the country's people to suffer. Their electricity prices have risen by 18% in the last year. And apparently that makes Chile's electricity costs the highest in all of South America.
Wow.
Prior to the riots, the government had announced that electricity prices would only go up about 9% by the end of this year, but they ended up canceling that. And what finally made them honestly get to the streets, though, was what they did was they hiked up the price of the metro, in other words, their public transportation system. And a lot of people, it's a critical source of mobility for the nation's poor, and they revolted at the thought that even as coal, oil, and gas prices remained low, prices to rent the metro were going up so the government could reap praise for running its transit system on wind and solar power. People finally had enough.
No, I'll tell you, I need to get into more of that because that's kind of what this show was predicated on. Was international events like that, and Chile has been brewing for about a month or so, and they're really starting to get violent. And it was all a revolt against austerity programs. The government realized that, the leftists had promised way more than they could deliver. And so somebody that was sober got into power and wanted to start dialing that back. And when you end up with a population like the population of the city of Pittsburgh that is dependent on people giving them things because they can't get it for themselves, this is what happens.
Right. And I guess
and it'll happen here, too. It's going to happen here, too. I mean, there's going to be a point where they tell me I got to pay for more parks, and I'm either going to leave or whatever I do. It's crazy. Thanks, Marlene. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, let's go over to Sean in California. Your final comments and whatnot.
Well, my final comments is I called my congressman today.
Okay, how'd that go?
And sure enough, no, it was a secretary. It sounded like a secretary to me. I said, I'm not for this impeachment and all that. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to just watch your office through your actions. And if I so much as see you try to convince more people to impeach this president, I just said, you know what? I'm not voting for you. And I'm never going to vote for a Democrat. So it's like, whatever. Right. You're not voted for anyways.
There's going to be a time where you're not even going to be able to send them a message if they know that you're not a Democrat, not on board. That's the way this whole thing works. But I will urge you to continue engaging, though, Sean. Don't ever stop that. Don't underestimate our power. Let's put it that way.
And don't ever stop calling too. I mean, even if they are Democrat, ladies and gentlemen, don't stop calling them. Give them hell. Tell them.
And more importantly, don't stop listening to the show, and try to get the show out to as many people as you can. This is a professional operation here. You don't get. Let me just tell you that when you tune in to Cold War Radio, you get 2 hours of radio. That's more than you get if you tune in to 3 hours of Sean Hannity or Rush Limbaugh. We put more work in than either one of those two. And not taking anything away from them, but I'm saying, what did we have? We had a 30-second commercial in the middle. That was it. Not 6 commercials every 15 minutes. So anyway, just keep that in mind. Thanks for calling, Sean. Appreciate it as usual.
Peace out.
All right, Sean from California. All right, Sal, we're going to get back to a couple things here. I want to talk a little bit about General Flynn. This guy has been so persecuted that I pray at the end, and I got to give a caveat. I do not like most military intelligence officers. Initially, if you go back into the archives, you will see that I was against Flynn ever being involved in President Trump's campaign, strictly because he was an intelligence officer. These people are not part of the normal chain of command or order of battle of the United States military. They're especially at the high echelons. They're off by themselves. At the lower echelons, the echelon I was in, they do paint the picture of the battlefield for the commander. And they do a good job at that. But at these higher levels, like the Flynn level, I think they think they're running the show. And that's why I was never a fan of Flynn. But now that I see what's happened to the guy, it's different. Now I have to come to his defense.
Yeah, it seems like he was really seems like there's what's really the truth, what really happened in those interviews. What really happened.
And before that.
Well, I think he was ultimately set up.
He was. He absolutely was.
He was a marked man.
And the thing that really ticks me off is we talk about these generals all day long, and they're all generals. And when I say general, that means 4 stars. Lieutenant General Flynn was denied his 4th star by Obama because of his actions trying to find the truth. And President Trump You need to pardon this guy very soon, and he needs to get back pay every single day from the day he gets pardoned to the day that he got, put under investigation. He needs to get back pay as a 4-star general, and he needs to get promoted retroactively. And I mean that. Let's listen to General Flynn's lawyer.
Former federal prosecutor and author. Great to see you, Sidney. And let's start with the Flynn motion here. Is there any reason why the Department of Justice shouldn't comply with your request to have a full search of the database that would reveal what you expect to find?
No, absolutely not, Lou. It should be absolutely required in this case. I mean, we've just found extraordinary breaches of protocol, one ridiculous thing after the other, and the latest is that the government just wrote us tonight and said that for the last 18 months or so, they've misidentified the agents who wrote each of the notes. They've had it backwards.
Oh, for crying out loud. And what is the import of that? Does it have a material impact on, I understand it's frustrating and frankly stupid of them, but is there anything about it that suggests that it is conscious malfeasance, or is it just simply sloppiness?
Well, it simply raises a lot more questions. We need handwriting samples from the two agents. We need to know the unredacted documents instead of, we've got heavily redacted documents with respect to notes and 302s. We need them unredacted because they're supposed to bear the agent's signatures and dates. It just raises far more questions than answers for the whole scenario.
And you have said point blank the government has been unconscionable in its conduct here. Where do we stand with the judge making a ruling on you are seeking, if you will, to have this all reversed? Where are we?
Well, first, we want all the evidence we've requested disclosed because we want to show exactly what happened here. The American public deserves to know. The court deserves to know how badly it's been lied to, and certainly General Flynn does. So we're asking for all the evidence that we listed in our original motion to be produced, and then we will seek to move to dismiss for egregious government misconduct. I'm sure the evidence is going to support that. Frankly, we probably have enough already, but Judge Sullivan could do it on his own if he wants to, but I think at a minimum he's going to order the government to produce a whole lot more evidence than it has in the past.
And how soon will we find out if that is indeed the direction he chooses to go, the judge? I'm
expecting it within a couple of weeks. He said he wanted to move this along.
And I guess in federal court parlance, that's moving it along, but it seems to me that it is at best no more than a trot when a full gallop seems to be in order here, given what the general has gone through.
Yes, I agree with you on that, but he did allow the parties full and comprehensive briefing. He now has that, including the government SIR reply, which we just destroyed in our filing yesterday, and I think he's got all he needs now to make his ruling without further ado.
Is there any reason why we should not expect the Attorney General appointed by this president to simply expeditiously withdraw from this case and acknowledge what you have discovered so far? Why perpetuate this?
I'm a little surprised the Department of Justice hasn't come in and done something already, like appoint at least new prosecutors to produce all the Brady evidence. But maybe he's giving Mr. Van Grack all the rope he needs to hang himself, because that's what he does every time he files another document.
Well, it is, I suppose, not cold comfort to General Flynn, but it, at the same time, has to be agonizing for what the man has gone through to have even a day's delay in getting this this burden off his back and his spirit. Sidney Powell, your indomitable spirit, serving justice well, and certainly the general, and we appreciate you taking time to be with us. What's the next step?
Man, Lou Dobbs sounds a little tired in that back and forth.
He does. But let's give a little bit of education to
let's do that,
because there's a few terms that were used in there, and people should understand them.
That's why I have you on there.
When they talk about Brady evidence, there was a Supreme Court case decided in 1963, and the Brady doctrine is a pre-trial discovery rule, and discovery is what you do to collect evidence. And in short, what that rule does and what that evidence does, it requires that the prosecution, this would be the government, must turn over all exculpatory evidence to the defendant, and that would be General Flynn in this case, in a criminal case. Exculpatory evidence is evidence that might exonerate the defendant. So you can see what a really big deal that could be. And going back to what they really were talking about was a 302. And a 302 is where a federal agent lists the person who's interviewing the likely defendant or witness, the date of the interview, the name of the interviewee, the place. It allows them to draft, what was said. It can be very short, memo can be very long. It's a recollection of what happens and perhaps questions. It is not a transcript.
Right. And let's just, because I got some feedback in the chat room, let's do me a favor and differentiate between Brady evidence and the Brady bill. And if you don't know about the Brady,
are we talking about Brady bill is a firearm? Are we talking about the Brady bill?
Yeah, we're not talking about the Brady bill. Yeah. This is Brady. It's two different things.
Right. There's two different things. There was a Supreme Court case decided in 1963. The case is Brady versus Maryland, and that brought up this issue here
with evidence
that the rule requires that the prosecution must turn over all exculpatory evidence. Not all the time the government, has evidence that says you committed this crime. There can be evidence there that says that you didn't commit this crime, that you did tell the truth, that you didn't lie.
Now, the Brady bill was about gun control. That was the press secretary for President Reagan that was shot during the assassination attempt. And the Clinton administration exploited him and his wife and several other gun grabbers. And that had a lot to do with the semi-automatic rifle ban and Clinton's attempts to infringe on citizens' Second Amendment rights. That's the Brady bill.
But the Brady versus
two different things.
Right, the Brady versus the state of Maryland involved a murder case.
Evidentiary procedures.
It involved a murder case and evidence and a plan of a bank robbery, and the although I don't know what the ultimate decision was, that the decision was that withholding that exculpatory evidence violates due process, where the evidence is a matter of either guilt or to punishment. So it's very important that this evidence come out and get heard, because oftentimes there could be situations where there's evidence that proves your innocence.
Absolutely. And this whole debacle with General Flynn is a complete miscarriage of justice. And I think this is where presidential pardons are critical. I mean, this needs to be corrected. This has been too long. And I've never interviewed General Flynn, but I have interviewed his son. And I want to give a shout out to Wayne Dupree for giving me the opportunity to have interviewed a lot of people when I was working with him. And that was one of them, was General Flynn's son. This needs to be fixed. It just does. I have to shift gears. We're running out of time. I want to play a quick clip about Democrats and about something that you have to understand. You've seen all these radical communists in the Democratic presidential primary field, and they all are. And you've heard their radical positions on different areas, and one very clearly was gun grabbing. I mean, they all came out for it. When we get to the general election, you're not going to hear that. And I don't want you to forget that. Don't ever forget what you've heard in the primaries, because that's who they really are. The Democrats cannot win by telling the truth about what they want to do. And Joy Behar solidifies that in less than a minute.
Battleground culture war, and he ran as the most left, most woke candidate, and look where he ended, one of the first out of the race.
They should not tell everything they're going to do. Like, if you're going to take people's guns away, wait till you get elected, then take the guns away.
Which, by the way, that's what people like me think you're going to do. That's what people like me think is going to happen, so I appreciate his honesty.
Did you hear that cackling? I mean, in the background, it was really bad, man. I mean, the cackling in the background of that clip was just mindless.
You can laugh with them or you can laugh at them.
Right. But don't ever think that they're not wanting to take your guns.
No, and if you allow me, you know, that kind of dovetails into what happened here in Pittsburgh when Biden showed up here and talked to a bunch of very high net worth donors, and he is cognizant of this issue.
Almost forgot about that.
Yeah, it dovetails perfect into this issue, Hutch, because this is exactly what we're talking about.
It does, and to what Sal's saying, Biden came to Pittsburgh. Man, I'm glad I almost missed that, and this is one of the most important things I wanted to talk about tonight. But that's what happens when you have a good show. I mean, this is what happens. Biden rips condescending Democrats at a Pittsburgh fundraising speech. This guy came here, and he is a loser. He's not going to win. He might win here, but he's not going to win a whole lot of other places. And Julian Routh from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, an extreme left-wing newspaper, documented it as proudly as he could. I mean, he explains that Biden came here and gave a speech to really rich Democrat donors, politicians, and real estate executives yesterday night. Former President Joe Biden called out condescending Democrats who believe it's their way or the highway and lambasted President Donald Trump for damaging America's standing internationally. Now think about that statement, Sal. This is a guy who is on his knees in front of President Xi Jinping as his son gets rich with kickbacks, and especially Western Pennsylvania lost all their jobs to this move of this redistribution of wealth as we eased our manufacturing to the east. And I don't mean to eastern Pennsylvania, I mean to Japan and China. Because if you remember, I know you're old enough, it started going to Japan first. But that didn't last long, and it went to China shortly thereafter. And this guy is in Pittsburgh. And my main thing, and I'm going to let you get your take on it in a second, but I just want everybody to know who the people are that are supporting Joe Biden. Billed as co-hosts, pledged to raise more than $15,000 for the event. Dusty Kirk, partner at Reed Smith LLP law firm. Tom Van Kirk, executive vice president of Highmark Health. Doug Campbell, a founding member of the Campbell and Levine law firm. Ray Linsenmeyer, local Democratic activist and former candidate for Congress. And Gail Klingensmith, co-owner of the famous local diner chain Pamela's P&G Diner. A greasy spoon that is way overrated, by the way. Also in attendance and listed as a co-host was Jim Rooney, son of the late Steelers chairman and former U.S. ambassador to Ireland, Dan Rooney, who served as ambassador during the Obama-Biden administration. He basically sold the Steelers out to Obama. Pascal Pat Nardelli, president of Pittsburgh-based Castlebrook Development, introduced Mr. Biden. Though he hasn't yet given to the campaign, he pledged to raise more than $25,000 for this fundraiser as a co-chair. Also listed as a co-chair was Jack Piat, founder and chairman of Millcraft Investments. This is sickening to me, Sal. It really is. These people, along with establishment Republicans, sold this region out 30 years ago.
Well, getting away from that a little bit, Hutch, he is telling people that Trump is dividing the nation. We have no moral center anymore. And we're cozying up to thugs and despots, and we're damaging Americans' role in international affairs. And this is a quote. Mr. Biden said, "I'm going to beat this guy like a drum."
Well,
Let's remember that.
He said that several times.
Yeah, I'm going to beat this guy like a drum. We can handle 4 more years of Donald Trump with difficulty domestically and foreign policy. But 8 years of Donald Trump will fundamentally change the nature of who we are for at least 2 or 3 generations.
It'll fundamentally put your family's whole ass in jail, that's for sure. But go ahead.
Well, to me, it's going to fundamentally really change. I think they already did that the past 2 terms that while Biden was in office.
Yeah, we're just changing it back. We're just trying to change it back, man, to get it back.
We made this horrible deal with Iran that we just got done talking about.
And let's never forget that Republican Senator Corker facilitated that. Let's never, ever, ever forget that the Republican Party establishment is responsible for the Iran deal. Never forget that. The Corker Amendment, this guy, this traitorous guy, the Iran deal was a treaty that they tried to pass as not being a treaty. And the laws of treaties are that 2/3 of the Senate has to ratify a treaty. And somehow, before this treaty, the JCPOA, before it came in front of the Senate, Senator Corker was able to change the rules to where it took 2/3 of the Senate not to ratify the treaty. It took 2/3 of the Republican majority Senate to negate or turn down or reject the treaty. There is a special place in hell for Senator Robert Corker, ladies and gentlemen. Continue.
But getting more to Biden's speech, he called out other Democrats and telling them to, stop it, saying whether it's, my way or the highway.
Right, he did.
And he's what he's doing. That is pretty much essentially telling.
It's a winning proposition. It's a winning proposition.
What he's telling is, hey, you know what? We have all these things. Let's keep quiet about them,
right?
Because we don't.
Just like Joy Behar. Just like Joy Behar. You're damn right.
It's just like that. Hey, we want to
keep lying.
We want to take away your guns, but we don't right now.
Right. We want to take away your guns, and we're going to vote to take away your guns, but let's support people like Connor Lamb in PA 17 when he's out there with a weapon in his campaign commercial saying he'll never do it, but he votes for Nancy Pelosi 90% of the time. Or Senator Manchin from West Virginia who does the same thing, who goes out with a rifle in a campaign commercial and says never going to happen. These people are devils, man. They are liars, and you have to see right through them.
Yeah, they're just more of what he said. There's no way to get anything done. There's no way to bring this country together. There's no way to beat Donald Trump if we don't start talking about what we're for and why you can be extremely progressive but not off the wall.
Right. I mean,
and why you can be extremely progressive but not be socialist. What the? How do you make sense of that?
I don't know. Sal, another great performance from out west. How can people get in touch with you and your final comments, sir?
Final comments. Thank you. Great interview today. I hope we get to have him back. It was very insightful. Really great to hear internationally what's going on. We get past all the nonsense of the impeachment talk and talk about real issues that could potentially affect us in the long run. You can reach me at Twitter. On Twitter, Sal, SALATCWR.
My man. Another great show, ladies and gentlemen. The Islamophobic Cold War Radio had Omar Qudrat on tonight, and a very good source of information. We're going to have him back on. I'm going to tell Mona to do that. Mona may be going to a Young Republicans event tomorrow with Steve Bannon and some other people. And man, I hope we get some interviews. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I know she's going to go. I think she's going to go. Thank you, Suzanne. We appreciate the tickets. And man, I love doing this show, Sal. I'll tell you what, man. It's almost to where I'm ready to do this 5 days a week, man. I don't know. I just, when I have these breaks in between, I enjoy the breaks, but man, I'm in this war. We got to win, man. There's no messing around, man. We're closing in on the 2020 election. Things are happening. We will keep you informed. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Oh, and another thing. I want to thank you so much for listening to the show live during the third in a row Trump rally. Come on, POTUS. Can't you go to Tuesday and Thursday? You're killing me, man. But you're really not. People are still listening. Thank you very much. Thank you to all of our patrons and other contributors. And finally, thank you for letting us into your life for a couple hours. I'm Hutch Bailey Jr. We'll be back on Friday with Jack. God bless, folks. I would be remiss if I didn't say support rsbnmusic.bandcamp.com.